Hi, good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Kuf Tesvav, Maseches Yevamos. So we left off the bottom line of Kuf Yudal and Beis. Iboilu. So we started a new parak regarding a woman who comes from Medina Siyam, and there were a couple of situations, a couple factors that we take into account in terms of their relationship, whether it was Shalom, Beina, Leveno, and more important, or not more importantly, but more discussed, of whether there was Shalom or there was a Milchama. Now, during Shas Milchama, the issue is not to. Looks like it's going to fall off. You don't have a lot of space. Okay. So, yeah. So the issue is that during a war, there could be assumption, right? There could be assumption for, I guess, it's heavy. It could be assumption. You want to move down a little? That perhaps she didn't see him die, and therefore perhaps somehow survived. So, bottom line, he milchama bi'elam. She, right? She was the one who reported. By the way, he's in there's a big conflict in this area, wherever it was, right? Afghanistan, whatever it was. She informed the people. The people were unaware of milchama, so she informed that there was milchama there, and he died. So the question is, so once he does milchama, now there's an issue. So mahu. And do we say Mali the Shaker? She could have said, not mentioned there was any war, and she could have said my husband died. We believe her, or she could have claimed that. Oh, Dilma, or perhaps Keva the Amra Kedami. Since she basically has now established that there's a Muhammad, so therefore she might go ahead and assume right? Mali Shakar, so right? And therefore, 1 second, and therefore, maybe when there's a war, she can say that why would I go ahead and lie, to go ahead and rule my argument, but the Maisa that there's Muhammad there, and therefore maybe she just assumed that he died, or she didn't hear, or saw he got wounded and assumed for the worst, but did not actually see him die. So that was the question, right? So since that was the first side, right? Since I could have claimed that, I could have just said, Shalom, that he's dead. So believe me that I say that there was peace, but he died. But the issue is over here that if she says, I saw his body, I saw him dead, then she's believed, right? But the issue is, even we discussed yesterday, he was wounded, right? There's an assumption, right? So if there was a body, we say, until you know that you buried him, right? Until that, so then it's dead. But over here, maybe maybe not. But certainly, if she would say there's a war there and I saw him die and I saw him, as his dead body, then she would be believed. So Tashma, come listen. So Ishinu Aleinu Bayis. So Ishinu Aleinu Ma'ara. They set a fire upon a house on us, or a cave, right? Destroyed it. Who made Svanin Tzaltis, or her? We were on vacation and they set our house ablaze, or our cave, wherever we were staying, and he died, and I was saved. She is not believed. So what do you see over here? If she would have just said he died, she's believed. All of a sudden, she does the fire. So, but she didn't see him die in the fire. She just says a fire there. So, nevertheless, we say, and in a menace, maybe it's a proof to our case. Also, the woman's not believed the case time of war, fire similar to war. So, no, Gemara answers no. The didach is rachish nisa. The didei nami is rachish nisa. Just like you were miraculously saved, so too he could have been miraculously saved and got out. You didn't see him die, so maybe he would have got out the other end. So therefore, you can't bring that as a proof. So Tashma nafal of the gechavim, nafal at least if we were attacked by of the gechavim or thieves or bandits, right, which is another form of milchama, who mace, right? The Nitzalti. So, so he died and I was saved. So Nemenis, she's believed. So here it says she's believed. So her answer is no, Hasam Kadavidi. Over there it's like Ravidi, Isha Klei Zaina Allah. right? Because a woman has a way to go ahead and basically defend herself from attackers, right? She can, offer her body, right? She can offer herself, right? The man, they're going to go ahead and kill the man, and the woman, they'll violate. So perhaps that she was saved, in other words, because, she allowed herself to be violated, and he didn't have that option. So he was killed. So therefore, there's more of a reason to say Nemenes in this case. But for her to testify stam regarding Muchama, that we can't draw an answer from. So I guess there was a wedding that was taking place. At the end of the wedding, basically there was a large fire and it was burning down. So Amr lahu, chazu gavrai, right? So she said, "Quick, come look! The husband's, he's dying in the fire, right? He's dying in the fire, Mazel tov, right? Not the fire, but the mayor just walked in, right? So he's, yeah. So." I also Mazel tov on the wedding here, right? So she gets that right. I witnessed it, right. So he's dying. Check it out that he sees that. Make sure that you see that he's dead in this fire. So I'm not stuck as an aguna, or So also so they came and they saw. I guess in the fire afterwards, when they came to investigate the fire, they saw the body, charred body, couldn't, no simanim. And basically a hand that was sort of, basically came off, and was also burnt up over there. So right. So this is similar to the case of earlier where we said, well, just like, even though there's she wants to say, okay, this body was my husband, and therefore I'm free to go ahead and marry. And however, no. Rav Chia started to say, no, this should be some other case. That just like you miraculously got out, so he got out. How can you compare the cases? First of all, right, in that case, she just came to report the whole mice. Over here, she was saying, come take a look, see, he's burning there in the fire, right? And also, also over here, we got a body, right? And we got, someone's hand. So Rav Chia bar Avin would say, no, Gaber Charucha the Shadia Ema Inish Achrini Asa. Lesulia Ibachlisa Nora. We'll say maybe the charred body was someone who tried to come to rescue him, and I guess it wasn't the whole hall burned down. I guess it was maybe the private of the two of them, right? The yichud room, whatever, and maybe it was somebody who tried to go ahead and save him, right? That was the body that we saw, and Nora. Piece of the other Shadi Nora Isla Viasla Bemuma Machmas Kisufa Asa, right? The Alma. So perhaps it was there and the hand there. So perhaps he did get wounded in the hand. But what happened? That it could have been the other guy's hand or his own hand, the husband's own hand. But since all of a sudden he has his blemish, right? His hand got chopped off in getting out of the fire. He was embarrassed and he ran away. That's why he's not here after the fire. So it could be that it was the husband's hand that got burnt up, but he left, right? Because he got all embarrassed. So there is no proof over here to say that perhaps that this the man is dead.
A part of a person.
Well, it's nothing. We couldn't identify it. We couldn't identify it, so we couldn't say that this was the guy's hand who, and therefore the husband is dead, right? It's obviously the charred hand, so whoever's hand it was, but it could be that it was his hand that got chopped off and he ran away because he has a mum and he was embarrassed, right? So he left. And so therefore, the Gemara does not rule in that case to believe her. What do we say about one witness regarding, right, the testimony about an individual during time of war? So something that's will become revealed within time. A person won't lie about. And therefore, right, the guy says someone dies, it'll become true. If he walks the next day, it'll look like he's lying. Oh, Dilma, right? Over there, the reason why a woman is believed, right, is because she's the one who's going to look into the matter. She's going to make sure in order she wants to go, to remarry. She says, as an HSE, she's not going to go ahead and remarry, based upon lies. Right, and over here, perhaps he won't like him. He's not right? He won't, or in another case, right? That she might, not like him, right? She won't be meduyak in it, and go ahead and investigate the matter. So we want to know, is an Eid Echad, even somebody who's not necessarily involved, right? Is he believed, right? Maybe the Shas Mechama, right? We're worried that she's Nogeh B'davar and she doesn't like him, so she says, yeah, he's dead. So Amar Rabbi Rechama Toshma comes and Amar Rabbi Kiva says Rabbi Kiva Ksherati L'Nahardia L'Aver Shana, when I went to Nahardia to go ahead and Aver Shana, right, to go ahead and decide whether to add a month. Matzazi Nechemia Ish Beis Dali. I found Nechemia Ish Beis Dali. He's from Beis Dali. But he told me Shemati Shein Masina Seisha Be'eretz Yisrael Al Pi Eidach. Right, I heard that they don't allow a woman to go ahead and get married or remarried in Eretz Yisrael based upon the testimony of one witness that her husband died. El Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, but only Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba does. But no one else allows a woman to get married based upon the testimony of one individual. And I agreed, and I told him, yeah, that I confirmed with him the matter. And Amar Li, so he said to me, Amar Lahem Ishmi, so said Rabbi Kiva to them, tell them, right, in my name, Atem Yedim Hamadina Hazu Mishubeshes Begaisos. Right, you should know that this country is full of wars, is full of legions and armies. And Kach Mekublani Gamliel Hazaken. This is what I received from Gamliel Hazaken. Shemasin Haisha Pied Echad. Right, so that you can go ahead and have a woman remarry Al Pied Echad. So what do you see over here? So even the Shas Mechama, right? So we can depend upon one witness. So my Medim Meshubeshes, the Gisas, right? So he says, what does it mean? This Medina is Meshubeshes, means Begisos. Lav Avagad Medina Zum Meshubeshes, Kach Mekubani Shmasin Al Pi Eidachan. Right? It means that even though that there is war here, and during war, people might assume and not investigate the matter fully. Nevertheless, they remarry Al Pi Eidachan. Right? Because normally Al Pi Eidachan is during time of peace, we would believe, right? So over here is just during Shas Mechama, people can make assumptions and not investigate fully. So Alma Eidachan Mehemet. So you see, one witness is believed. Some Ravi Yachi Ma'ishna Medina Zu. Why is he Medina Zu? Kol Makom Sheish Gaisos. She says any place has a Gaisos. Why this place? Elama Rava, rather Rava says no. Hachi This is what he meant to say. Atem Yodim Shemedina Zu Meshabesh Begaisos. You should know that this country is full of wars and legions. Right? And therefore, I basically can't go ahead and send those, to go ahead and test, right? I can't leave, my house and go testify in front of you guys. He wasn't saying that the fact of the matter is that this is different. Rather, he was just saying that I can't get out of the house because of, there's people, right? I can't go ahead and travel. However, you should know that Rabbi Gamliel that was taught that Masin Al Pi Eidachan, and therefore it's not necessarily talking about during Shas Mechama. So Tashma Ma'isa b'shnei Talmidei Chacham shayu bayin im Abba Yosi ben Simai b'sfina. There were two Talmidei Chacham who were traveling with Abba Yosi ben Simai on a boat. B'tava, then it sank. V'hisi Rebbe Neshusayam Al Pi Nashim. And Rebbe, I guess, hearing about the news based upon the testimony of other women on the boat who saw the two Talmidei Chachamim, the two men die, so he allowed their wives to remarry. So water is like war, right? In war, perhaps you don't see the guy actually die. So water, right? You also maybe don't see him actually drown. There could be assumptions coming into play. The nashim afilu meya kedachadam. Right, and we know that women, right, are 100 women is equal to the testimony of one person, right? Normally, you need two witnesses, right? So you need two witnesses. So one witness is not a complete testimony. So two, you need two men, right? So 100 women or two women, whatever it is not a complete testimony. It's like half testimony. So 100 women, or even 100 women, in this case, is two women, right, is the same as one male witness. But you see that they are believed during, quote unquote, because it's mine, like Shas Mechama. So one witness is believed Shas Mechama. Viktana Yisiyah, and it says over there that he allowed them to marry. So Gemara says, does this make sense? What do you mean? If you're on a boat and you can't see the other end, so there's a svara that because you can't, if the boat goes down and you can't see the other end, perhaps the person ended up on the other side, right? Sometimes you might think logically, it's so big, he would die. No, it's not like that. If you can see the entire area, let's say a small lake, right? You got a Mosheva, Leech Lake, right? You can see the entire area, right? So you can see if someone was able to get out of the lake, right? But if you can't see the other end of the lake, right, then you don't know if the person ever, maybe somehow he got to the other side and got out. So therefore, this was a case of Ma'ashin themselves, no end, and therefore you're not believed. The person is not Ma'ashin themselves, he should surah. Such a case, a woman does not believe in such a case. Rather, what was the case over there? The Amri Askinu Kaman. Right? They said basically that they pulled up the bodies in front of us, right? They pulled out the bodies from the water. The Chazina Lialta, we saw them immediately before their bodies changed or whatever from the drowning. The Kamri Simanim, right? And they reported the simanim, right? The marks on the certain marks on the bodies, tattoos, whatever it was. Simanim. The lavalayu samchinan ela siman. So it wasn't necessarily based upon the testimony of the woman; it was more upon the simanim, right? Did he have a large, birthmark right over here? Yeah, they had a birthmark, so that was him. Did he have a huge scar in his arm or whatever it was? Was he missing a finger? Yeah, that was him. So they gave simanim. They were able to identify it, and that's the reason in that case why the husbands or the women were allowed to remarry based upon the testimony of the woman. How Gabra the Afkid Shum Shemi Gabi Chabre. There was a person who went ahead and deposited some sesame by his friend. So he gave him a barrel full of sesame. So he said, okay, comes back a week later. Okay, give me my sesame seeds. What are you talking about? Shagosinu. You took it away. So the guy said, what are you talking about? Right? What do you mean? I gave you 3/4 of a barrel and you got a 3/4 of a barrel of sesame sitting right here. So they said, we're talking about right? What do you mean? You took your sesame and this is somebody else's. What do you get out of here? Right? Right? So you thought to say, okay, so how do I rule in this case? So maybe like the case of Tamid Chachamim. In the case of Tamid Chachamim, there were bodies brought out, right? And we said that those bodies brought out were, right? What was the Tamid Chachamim? So the same thing. We don't say over there that those two Tamid Chachamim, those husbands are still alive. They ran off, and they had, these are 2 other dead bodies. So Rava says, how can you compare the two? Or how can you compare this barrel of sesame to the bodies over there that we say were not switched, but maybe this one were switched? Midami Hasim Kami Simanim. Over there are simanim. They gave birthmarks or some sort of deformities that make that specific to the individual. Hacha Shum Shumi. Over here is just sesame seed. There's nothing specific about the sesame. So my simanim by sesame. What there's no simanim. It's regular seeds. Right? And that's what you're going to say. Okay, well, I told you a barrel is 3/4 full, and here's a barrel 3/4 full, right?
Maybe
so
the barrel itself has.
Right. So he says, right? So he says, no, it just happens to be the same amount, right? It's a common measurement: 3/4 of a barrel, half a barrel. So it's 3/4 of a barrel. It's not necessarily a good siman, like a birthmark or missing a finger or whatever simanim that they use in the case to identify the men. So now there's the whole question of, do we go ahead and assume things are switched out? If you have a barrel holding produce and it's written on there kuf, right? A kuf, we'll soon see why it's shortened, which stands for carbon, something that was supposed to be offered, or hektish, or mem, it says, which stands for meiser, or dalas dimua, that's a mixture of truma and chulin, or tes is tavel, something that they didn't remove trus and meiser from, or tough for truma, right? Shabashas has sakana, how you kais in tough tachas truma, right? Because in times of when they couldn't really keep the Torah, they wouldn't write the full word, they would just write maybe a letter to correspond to what type of produce was in this barrel. And Amarle Ravina Ravashi, so over there, and I guess you can assume that the items, the content of the barrel was what was written on it. So if it was a tough, we would assume it's truma. And we're not concerned that it's mixed out. And I was over there just because the container on the outside says, right, there's a dalet, right, or a mem for meiser. We can assume it's meiser, and it wasn't switched out. I aim a seifa. Let's take a look at the seifa there. Rabbi Yosi Amir afilu matzah chavis v'kasev aleh truma. Even if you find a barrel, it doesn't just say top. It says truma harei elu chulam. Right, you can assume it's chulin. Right, it's not a proof it's truma. You can't treat it. Maybe it had to be a chumrah, but you can't treat it. Right, assume that it's truma. Shana yamer ishtaked havi mali truma. You can say maybe last year, right, this box was full of truma, upina, and then they removed its contents. Right. So, and therefore, this barrel, they just reused it, right? It happens all the time. You use a box, you label it, and then you remove the contents, and then you fill up with something else. So you see, it does happen. So Ella, the kuliyama chayshina shenapina. Rather, you might say that really we always are concerned that it's switched out. Over here, here's my focus. Mar savri misa defanino michaper havi chaper. One says that if he would have went ahead and switched it out, so he would have also changed the signage, right? He would have marked it off. Right, says either the fact that I guess maybe he didn't have the opportunity to do it, or maybe he left it there so no one would touch it. People assume it's truma, they wouldn't touch it, even though it was it was chulin. So therefore, maybe that was the machlokas over there as to whether really it is if it was switched out. So the machlokas of whether they would go ahead and relabel it or not. Now Yitzchak raised galusa. Now Yitzchak, I guess the Reish Galusa is not necessarily referring to the one and only exilarch at the time, but it could also have been a name that people went by. So Yitzchak Reish Galusa bar Achte de Rav Bibi. So Yitzchak Reish Galusa, who was the son of the sister of Rav Bibi, Havikazil me Kurtava la Aspamaya. Right, he was going from Kurtava to Aspamaya, the Shachiv, and he died. The Shalchum Hasan sent from over there. Yitzchak Reish Galusa bar Achte de Rav Bibi Havikazil me Kurtava la Aspamaya, the Shachiv. They sent a notice that a death notice that he died. So Michai Shinon Letrei Yitzchak Alo. Are we concerned about there's two people with the same name, two people who are identified as such? I guess both having, an uncle or whatever, right? The son of the sister, the uncle of Bibi, right? So Abaye Amar Chayshina. So Abaye says we are Chayshesh, right? Or perhaps it could be someone else. We can't, if this woman was widowed by this guy, we can't necessarily assume that was him. And Rav Amar Lo Chayshina. Rav says no, we're not concerned. And if that's what the death notice says, we can assume it was her husband and she can go ahead and remarry. So Amar Abaye Minamid Allah. Abaye says, how do I know though? Gita Dashkech Ben Ahardia. It was a case of a get that was found in Ahardia V'Kasev. But Sad Klunia Masa Ana. So it said over there on the side of Klunia, or the town, Ana Adrolinoi, right? Nahardia, Patris, right? So me, Adrolinoi, that was his name, from Nahardia, Patris, Zachris, Yas Planius, right? So I am going ahead and divorcing his wife, Plonus, right? Insi, his wife. So there was a get that said that this guy, all right, Androlniai, right? So he was divorcing his wife. So Vishalchu Avu the Shmuel, they sent for Shmuel Kamei Rav Yehuda. So he sent for the father of Shmuel, sent for Rav Yehuda and Nasiya, Vishalach Le, and he said, Tibodik Nahardia. Go ahead and check out Nahardia. Make sure there's no other people with the same name as this guy. And if there's nobody else with the same name, then you can assume that she's the one who's divorced. Whether this is referring to her. So that was Abaye. So Abaye seems to say we are Chayshesh. We are Chayshesh for someone with the same name, even though it's a little more specific. Still, it's a possibility. Rav Amar Im Isa. This is what are you talking about? If you're just looking around town, you should check they call it Kol. You should check everywhere. Maybe he moved out. Maybe there was somebody else who moved out of town. He was formerly known for the Hardia, but now he's beyond the Hardia. Rather, really didn't need to go ahead and check. But since he said that, they said, okay, we'll go ahead and let's at least check the locals and see if someone has the same name. And so that was Abaye's proof. And Rava deflected it. So Abaye's proof says, we see over there by the case of the get that we go ahead and we assume, we don't assume it's the same one, it could be someone else. And Amar Rava, so Rava says, how do you know? It's a Hanu Trey Shtari Dinafik Mechuza. There are two stars that came from Mechuza V'Chasivahu, Chavi Bar Nani, V'Nani Bar Chavi, two different documents, loan documents that said you have to go ahead and pay me, Chavi Bar Nani, and Nani Bar Chavi, two different documents. The Agbu Bahu, and I guess it was a common name, and it was collected. It was used to collect these people holding the notices that says, "Okay, you owe me the money." They're able to collect. And Rava Baravu is right. So he allowed them to collect. But there was many people with that name. Right? It's a common name, right? So you see over there that even though it was a common name, we don't assume it was switched around, right? And according to Abaye, so the Abaye says, "Oh, why wouldn't you be able to go ahead and collect on this, right? Eat the fila. If you're talking about it's an IO. I can go ahead and collect from Bob, right? And it says, Yoel Goldberg collects from Bob, right? So somebody else, maybe it's another Yoel Goldberg, right? So even the fila, if it's so, hey, this is cash, right? If I lose this star, I'm out my $100. I want to collect from Bob, right? So therefore, I'm going to be careful with it. So Abaye says there's no reason to think that it's not legit. If it's going to fall, so he's going to be careful with it. And Ila Pikadon, so maybe, even though the star says Yoel Goldberg can collect from from Alan, right? So, and if I gave it to somebody else, came in the Shmei Kishmei Lo Mafking Bey, I'm not going to give someone else with the same name, happens to be Yoel Goldberg in Miami. I'm not going to give him to hold on to this document for me, right? So then when I need it back, I'm going to go ahead and collect the Bob, because then he can use us. So I'm not going to use someone with the same name, and so there's a Yoel Goldberg holding it, right? So the Pekadon came in the Shmei Lo Mafking Gabe. So my Marta Dilma Masterle, and so they say, okay, maybe I gave it over to a different Yoel Goldberg. So there we say Dilma Masterle. So we say no, and one goes ahead and gives it to somebody else, though the contents of the words is acquired by the new guy. He would acquire, so therefore he's the now possession, and he can be the rightful collector of that money. So you see, in that case, the Abaye says there's no reason to be chayshish. Since I present a document which says Yoel Goldberg can collect this money, therefore there's no reason to be concerned that there's a different Yoel Goldberg. Therefore, that's why in that case that they're able to go ahead and use those stars. We'll continue here tomorrow. Mitzvah Hashem. Everyone have a wonderful day, and